Alrighty, happy Friday, friends. Welcome to week 2 of Build Resilience, Manage Stress with myself, Shannon Parks, your on-site Cigna health coach. I am so glad that you're here hanging out with me, tuning in for week 2 of this 7-week series that we will conclude in the end of October. Today, we're going to be talking about relationships and how they can contribute to stress or alleviate stress. I'm sure that each of you, much like myself, have been on both sides of that fence, whether it be personal relationships, professional relationships, or anything in between. So let's go ahead and hop in and get started, shall we? Okay, so on my screen, you can see an outline of what to expect over the next 7 weeks. Like I said, this is week 2, and today we're going to be talking about relationships and social support as it pertains to stress. So the relationships that we have in our life can really have an effect on the amount of stress that we experience at any given time. So I loved this meme when I was making the presentation. You can't have relationship stress if you don't have a relationship. But in all seriousness, maintaining good relationships can include anything from resolving conflict at work to patching up differences with our friends, coping with caregiving, spending more quality time with our partners, or improving communication with our children. Relationships, whether with a friend, a family member, a partner, or somebody professional, can be a great source of support and love. They can also be a source of irritation, frustration, and additional pressure, like I was saying. It's natural for conflict to arise between friends and family members or even our colleagues from time to time. And rather than denying it or hoping it'll go away, which could contribute to feelings of stress, try putting in place some of the communication tips and tricks that we're going to cover together today. So I wanted to show you guys this funny clip, and it doesn't show on my screen, so let me go ahead and get it pulled up here for you guys so that you can see it. Alrighty, so let me just scoot this box here, make it a little bigger. Perfect. And hopefully you guys can hear this, but I'm going to play this clip from The Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, we can't hear it.
Oh, dang. You guys can't hear it. So, okay, I'll describe it to you since you can't hear it, which is really unfortunate. I was hoping you'd be able to hear it. So essentially what's happening for anybody who's watched The Big Bang Theory, you have two characters here, and Sheldon, who is a little neurotic, is talking about Penny being at the emergency room. And there's this form that they have to fill out and a huge communication conflict between the two of them. So there's a lot of nonverbal cues for the communication mishap going on. Her arms are crossed, he's scoffing at her, he's rolling his eyes at her. So there's a lot of things that go into communication besides just what we're speaking verbally. So we want to think about the 4 pillars of good communication. The first of them is listening effectively, the second being communicating clearly, the third being thinking ahead, and the fourth being managing conflict. Communication can really have a powerful effect on bringing us closer or further away from another person. And how we communicate really affects how others respond to us. The better that we are at communicating with each other, the better our interactions and our relationships, and ultimately our well-being and our stress levels will be. And like I was saying, the 4 main pillars of good communication are on the screen. So we're going to take a deeper dive into all of those pillars today. So listening effectively, I thought this little boy was just so cute on the slide. He's listening so hard, right? But some main things when we think about listening effectively, it's not just hearing somebody else, right? It comes to mind for me that the Charlie Brown comics where they're like, wah, 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 right? That's not really listening effectively. That's hearing somebody, but maybe we're not listening. So we want to try to give our full attention to the speaker. And I promise you, this is not just because I'm giving a presentation, but truly trying to avoid letting our thoughts wander, because it can be easy to get like so distracted with all the myriad of thoughts and stuff that floats through our brain. Human beings have 6,000 plus thoughts a day, so it's really easy to get distracted. But just dialing into the person speaking and seeking to understand what they're saying can really help improve how effectively we're listening. Number 2 is letting the speaker finish before you begin to talk. So it can be really, really easy to try to predict what someone is going to say, but holding off lets them complete their entire thought. And I'm sure if we were to do a show of hands, each of you can speak to just how that has worked out in your life before. I can totally be humble enough to admit that I have thought that somebody was going to finish a sentence or a thought in one way, and it took a totally different turn to the other direction, right? And I was really surprised because what I thought they were going to say is not what they said at all. And had I cut them off or interrupted their thought, I would not have been able to hear that what they were thinking is actually different than what I was predicting that they were thinking. Number 3 is to finish listening before you start talking. I think that goes right into the second point that we were just talking about. We can't fully listen to somebody if we're trying to think about what we're going to say next. And I know that I'm really subject to that. I'm constantly like listening to what other people are thinking, and at the same time drawing my own thoughts and conclusions and responses to what they're saying in my own head as they're saying it to me. But instead of doing that, we should really pause, fully absorb what people are saying to us, and then formulate our response back. So rephrasing what the other person has said is tip 4 for listening effectively. I use this a lot in my coaching sessions. I'll say things like, oh, do you mean? Or can you tell me a little bit more about? Can you explain more about what I heard you say, etc. Those are all handy phrases to help be assured that you heard exactly what the speaker was saying. There are times where I have thought I've mimicked a thought or an idea back to somebody and they've said, oh, no, that's not what I meant. What I actually meant was XYZ. And so that gives you another degree of clarifying communication, which can lessen any stressors related to communication problems. Number 5 is going to be to avoid emotional involvement. This can be tough too, right? It's so easy for our emotions to come into play when we're talking about communicating with other people, especially if it's an emotional topic or it's a triggering topic for us. So we want to think about really listening to what that person is saying and not just listening for what we want to hear. That can be really, really tough. I'm not going to lie. Number 6 is to give visual feedback. So actively participating and letting the speaker know that you've heard them with a head nod or a smile, laugh, or even a frown, or sometimes a complex look on your face as you're trying to figure out what they're saying, really helps to show your feelings about what the person has said and gives them a physical cue that yes, you're listening, and 2, you've heard what they've said. The next pillar of good communication is to communicate clearly. Again, this little boy is just so darn cute. Oh my gosh, he's like, what did I hear through this telephone game? So using the feeling words rather than assigning blame can really help us communicate clearly. So what does that mean? For example, try saying things like, I feel upset when you say that, rather than you say that to upset me, right? That little shift in our response can really have an overall positive impact on the communication efforts and any stressors related to those communications. These kinds of statements really help us transition both people identifying the cause of the problem and its effect that it's having on you as an individual, because they're going to have some feeling words to say back to you, I'm sure. So number 2 is to try to stay focused, stick to the topic at hand, and resist the temptation to bring up old issues or things that have upset you in the past. This can be really tough, especially if you have unresolved feelings surrounding the communication. It can be really challenging. So give yourself some grace here. We're not perfect. We are human beings. We want to give room for that human experience, right? But trying to stick as close to the topic at hand is really helpful in communication efforts. And number 3 is to ask questions. So we want to try our best to fully listen to somebody, to think about all of the things that they're saying, and then to give them some feedback as well by asking questions. Hey, what did you mean when you said XYZ? Or I heard you say ABC. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Or what got you to feel the way that you feel? All of these are probing questions that help expand our communication efforts. So I love this meme here, me recreating an argument I had 6 hours ago with new and better points. You can see Matthew McConaughey has all these papers strewn across a desk, and he is really working hard here. But seriously, we want to think about all of these things when we're thinking about communication efforts, an argument, a disagreement, varying understanding levels within communication, right? Like, it's a funny meme, but there's some truth to it. What do they say? Behind every joke is some truth. And I would say that's true here too. So the next pillar of good communication is thinking ahead. So we want to try to give advanced warning. If you've had a bad day, call your partner or call your roommates, call your family member, and let them know so that they can adequately prepare themselves and perhaps postpone any difficult conversations that maybe they wanted to bring to the table that day when they saw you. I don't think that I had ever thought about doing that, but I think that it's a really great point. When I was researching and working through the workbook associated with this course, I was really taking in a lot of these tactics for myself as well. This isn't just for you guys, it's for me too. I'm learning alongside you, and giving you advanced warning is something that I've learned from this. Such a smart little tip and hack, if you will, but it really can have a long-lasting impact on your communication. If you've had a bad day and you go in the front door and you greet your spouse, significant other, roommate, friends, family members, etc., and you're disgruntled, that could set off further stressed communication through the evening or the rest of the day. Remembering our manners. Of course, it's super important. If you're running late, let people know and try to give them an accurate arrival time. Just thinking ahead and having that consideration can lessen any stressful communication that you might be going through. Taking a deep breath. If you feel like things are getting out of control, take some time to unwind so you're less likely to take your frustrations out on other people. I can honestly say I used to be somebody that wanted to hash things out right away, right? Like, let's just get it all on the table. Let's talk about it now. And if you can relate with this, like, drop me something in the chat. Tell me you can relate and that I'm not alone, because I know that there are other people out there like that. However, through learning my own communication style, my own processing style, the ways that I feel like I best show up in the world, I've realized that taking some time to pause, reflect, consider how I feel, consider how the other person feels, and really gather my thoughts before embarking on that bigger conversation can help the outcome so much. And then the fourth pillar is really managing conflict, right? When it comes to communication, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is managing conflict through conversation. So we want to try to assume the best we can. I tend to be a more optimistic person. I know that other people tend to be more pessimistic, right? And so if you are a more pessimistic person, maybe recognizing that in your communication, in your conflict management style, and addressing that within yourself. You can work with one of the Signet coaches as well as the EAP representative who's on site to manage these things and start to turn a more pessimistic outcome or outlook into a more optimistic one, which will help you assume the best. So unless we have the evidence, try to give people the benefit of the doubt, I think, is the bigger message here. Number 2 is try not to put it off. Instead of letting things build up and build up and build up until we explode over something so small and so tiny, try to deal with issues as they come up. Now, that may not be possible in the moment, but instead of letting it go a week or a month or even longer, trying to deal with things as they come up instead of letting them build and build and build where emotional tensions run high. Number 3 is taking a time out. If you feel too angry to talk calmly with your with the other person that's receiving your communication, take a break and agree to come back at a later time to finish the conversation. There's nothing wrong with that. Keeping in mind that the idea is to resolve the conflict, not to win the argument. That has to be at the forefront of our minds, right? We're looking for a resolution for the conflict. We're not looking to win the argument. It can be so easy to shift into wanting to win the argument, be the bigger person, be the right person, right? But instead, if we look at this instead as I want to find a solution for whatever conflict we're facing, that can shift things pretty dramatically in a good way. And then considering what the real issue is, right? So, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped being realistic. So considering the possibility that there may be other issues that are bothering you or the other person. For example, maybe you're tired or you're sick or you're just having a bad day, you're really stressed out, you have a lot going on at work. That can all impact our personal communications as well. And then the last one, considering what the real issue is. Are you being defensive because you feel guilty about something? Are you holding a grudge against a previous issue? What's going on within you or within the other person that may be impacting the communication dynamic between the two of you? So I wanted to talk about the power of I statements. And I love this photo here. I'm working on myself, for myself, by myself. And of course, you're here in this group and we're so glad that you're here. But a lot of the work that we're talking about is internal work. We're just giving you the tools to know how to do that work. So let's talk about what even is an I statement. An I statement is a statement that simply begins with I. It can be used to take responsibility for one's feelings instead of blaming someone or something else. Super important in effective communication, right? Just taking it on and acknowledging when we are the one at fault. So, for example, instead of saying, "You always ignore me," an I statement to convey the same message would be, "I feel unimportant when you don't answer my questions." That has a much bigger impact because it says how I feel. I feel ignored when you don't answer my questions, instead of putting the blame on you, saying that you always ignore me. So we're not talking about these I statements, so beware. I feel like you should talk less. Not appropriate. I feel like your reactions are not sane. As much as you want to say that, probably not a good idea, right? I feel like you nag me too much. Okay, that's not the powerful I statement that we're looking for. So when we're trying to communicate our feelings, we want to address how somebody else makes us feel. So I feel blah, 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 right? Whatever it is related to how the other person on the other end of the communication impacts us, but not in a negative way. So job stress is more strongly associated with health complaints than financial or family stressors. And 64% of adults rank work as their top stressor in their life. And work communication goes right into that, right? Like we all know people in our world, in our work world, who maybe aren't the best communicators. Maybe they're a little brash, maybe they're short, maybe they're not good at verbalizing all of the things that they want to say in an effective way to help their fellow colleagues understand. And this directly contributes to that 64% of adults who rank work stress as the top stressor in their life. So how do we manage our stress at work when it comes to communication? If you feel like you're stressed at work, you're not alone. Not only do I hear it a lot in my one-on-one coaching engagements that a lot of the population is stressed, but a majority of Americans, 2/3 of Americans are stressed at work. If you think that you may be suffering from work-related stress, go ahead and take note of these 5 tips that we're about to cover for managing the stress that you're experiencing. So number 1 is take your time. How many of us start our day by rushing out the door, rushing through traffic, rushing to our desk, rushing to the email inbox, rushing to get online, right? Instead, take a step back, make a list of all the tasks that you have to prioritize in a day, and estimate how long each will take you. You guys, I have this big notebook. Look how thick this notebook is. I have this big notebook, and every day I write a to-do list of all the things that I need to get accomplished at work so that I don't feel like I'm rushing from one thing to the next. If you allow a little bit of extra time to complete each of those tasks, then you're going to feel a lot less stressed and your tasks are going to get accomplished. It will also help if you list your tasks in the order of priority, right? So you're not searching of, oh, out of this list, what do I have to do next? Number 2 is be realistic. If you have more tasks than you think that you can manage, consider talking with your manager about your priorities and any options that may be on the table for you to help manage those tasks. Trying to hide the way that you feel or covering up the fact that you can't meet those demands will only contribute to more stress, and stress then turns into overwhelm, which turns into burnout. Remember, a problem can't be resolved if we don't recognize it, right? And that includes being vulnerable and recognizing it with your management. Number 3 is be professional. Clutter can make it more difficult to get your work done and can also make you appear unprofessional. So keeping a tidy workspace can really reduce your stress a lot. Number 4 is communication. Surprise, surprise, right? Taking the first step towards speaking with somebody about your work situation can be so hard, but arranging a short meeting with your manager, or if that's possible, or taking some time to organize yourself beforehand and think about what you'll say if you meet with myself or you meet with an EAP or HR representative, and how you'll present your case, as well as what resolution you're looking for. A lot of us can fall victim to wanting an outcome, but not really knowing what the resolution is that we're looking for. So always considering, okay, yeah, I want it to be better, but how do I want it to be better? And how can I facilitate that in the workplace? And number 5 is breaking it up. If you're really, really busy, taking a break can feel so hard. I know so many of the people that I meet with say, oh, I don't stop for lunch, I'm too busy, or I don't take a break, I'm too busy. But working too much can actually cause you to be less productive. Even taking 5 minutes to calm your mind can make a big difference in your stress and concentration level. So consider that when you're going throughout your day. I love to set a goal when I'm working with people around, hey, let's set a strong boundary, a self-care boundary around taking your lunch or taking a 15-minute break in the afternoon, because you deserve that. It's going to reduce your stress and it's going to help you feel like you're prioritizing your overall health and well-being, which is so important. Okay, guys, so that concludes how relationships and social dynamic can impact our stress. And I wanted to take a little bit of a look ahead. So if you look in your Healthier Point of View, Build Resilience to Manage Stress workbooks, I would love to have you check out the conflict management plan on page 19, as well as the communication Q&A journaling space on page 24. All of that is for your own information. It's not for me. It's to help you learn the tips and tricks that we've talked about here in our sessions together and continue that work on your own. So totally voluntary. You should have gotten the workbook in your email, a PDF copy. If you haven't gotten it, please let me know. I'm more than happy to send that back out to you so that you can take a look at some of these extras and really drive a lot of what we're talking about home. Let's take a quick look ahead to next week's session, which will be week 3, and we're going to be talking about building resilience. So we'll talk about what resilience is, why it's important, and how to intercept negative thoughts, as well as how to boost positivity. So if you're one of those people that felt like, oh gosh, maybe I'm the pessimistic one she's talking about, this session next week is going to be for you. We're going to talk about boosting that positivity, lowering the negative thoughts, and how to thrive in that environment.